Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and yes, of course, we are your number one podcast to bring you stories around death, dying, and grief, all the messiness that comes in between, with some amazing people out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, I would like to say that if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And most importantly, this is a live stream. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. One other thing before we get started, this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, guys, help me welcome my next guest, Nickole, to the show. Nickole, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. And before we get started, introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Nickole Semakula, born in Germany. My father was military, so I have that background. I've lived in Colorado Springs pretty much most of my life, and love to travel. Love to work out. I love to play basketball. And I also have my own business, which is called Zeny's Heart. And that is my new journey in life right now is spreading the word about how to turn your grief into growth, a journey of healing and transformation.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about your work for a little bit. Explain more about what you do.
Okay. So I go around speaking about grief. I tell my story about the loss of my 9-month-old baby named Zendaya, and the experiences that I've had as a grieving mother. But I also am here to encourage people about how they can make it through this tough season in their life, which grief isn't just about the loss of a loved one. It can be, a loss of a job, a loss of a pet. It could be a weight gain. It could be various things. And so I just want to help people to see that grief can come in various forms.
Now, I guess my next question would be, take us on a journey of leading up to you were, because your father, your mother, your wife, your friend, you work out and all these different things up until the loss. Take us on that journey. What was that like?
Well, my husband and I had tried to get pregnant for almost 6 years. And at that time, I worked at the courthouse, and the courthouse can be a very busy, stressful environment. And so I wasn't able to get pregnant. And during that time as well, I decided, I want to start my own business as a notary. I want to be able to do the stuff I'm doing in the courthouse, but on my own. And so I decided to start a notary business. And so 2018, I started a little bit here and there. And then eventually I was able to say, I want to put my 2 weeks in at the courthouse and start my notary business. As soon as I left the courthouse, within 2 months, I was pregnant. And so stress, I always say this, is that stress can be a demon. Stress can be just destroy people's lives. And so with me getting pregnant, I decided that, I would keep working until basically the day before she was born, I was able to do my last closing. After that, after finding out I was pregnant, though, I went to the doctors to confirm. And the doctor kept insisting that I have a genetics test. Now, I have 2 other kids who are much older, and I born back in the 90s, I'll just say, and never had heard anything about a genetics test. Even then, it was just more of like, you found out you was pregnant, you would have a couple of ultrasounds to find out the sex of the baby, and that's really it. So this was all new. And also, I want to point out that I was 45. So they definitely were putting me in a different category. So I wanted to tell the doctor that I don't think it's necessary to do the genetics test, but I finally caved in and I took the test. She had a phlebotomist come out to my house and do the blood draw. And after about 5 weeks, I was sitting here and still doing some notary stuff, and the phone rings and it's the doctor. And she says, I answer the phone and she says, I wanted to let you know that your genetics test came back as your baby having trisomy 18. Trisomy 18 is where I had an extra chromosome that would affect the baby's internal organs. And so she said, don't go looking on Google to see what this is about. And I was like, well, that's the very thing I'm going to do, because I don't know what you're even talking about. And so I went online, and as she's talking, I can hear her talking, but my eyes are just filling up with tears. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I don't even know what this is. This just doesn't look good. And I'm here by myself receiving this news. And she kept talking and talking. And I just wanted to tell her to just stop talking. Just leave me alone, kind of thing, because I didn't know what was going on, with this information. It was overwhelming to me. So eventually my husband gets home, and I tell him the news. And one of the things that the doctor did say, though, she says people usually abort their baby by this time, or at this time, when they find out this news. And she let me know that with trisomy 18 babies, they can be born stillborn, pass away right after birth, or maybe live about a week. And so I tell my husband this when he gets home, because I didn't want to disturb him at work. And we both decided right then and there that we're going to stick this out. We're going to have this little baby. And it was a girl. We found out that soon that she was a girl. So I don't know if you want me to tell more, but
no, please continue.
Okay. So after finding this out, time goes by, and they start having me to have ultrasounds. And these ultrasounds become many. Now, again, like I said, in the past, it was only like 2, but now it was all the time. I had to have these ultrasounds, and I didn't want to have an ultrasound all the time. I felt fine. And so when I went in, I thought I was actually just going to a regular checkup, but they sent me out of that office to go down the hallway to where they did the ultrasounds. And I went in there, and I was like, I don't understand why I need to have an ultrasound. Why so soon or already? And so she goes, and the girl was not very pleasant to me. And she just said, you're here because your baby is really small. And so for me, that hurt because that's not something you want to hear. And it just wasn't nice the way that she said it. So I went in the hallway, and I was, crying and everything. And I got myself together and went back in there. And I kid you not, from that day on, I felt like I was in a mentally abusive relationship with the medical staff, the medical team that was assisting me. What occurred is that they just never had anything positive to say. They could never find anything good to say. In one of my ultrasounds, the doctor said, we're going to be looking for the baby's nasal bone to be short and flat. We're going to be looking for her neck to be short. We're going to look for her fingers to be all twisted up. And every time I went in to get the ultrasounds, none of those things were showing up. And there's even, I kid you not, I have an ultrasound picture where our baby's hand was up like this in the ultrasound to show my fingers are just fine.
Right.
And so more and more this kept happening, and I had to have somebody go with me to these ultrasounds eventually, because I would leave there distressed and crying because of the way that I was treated. They never said anything nice. They would always look at her heart. And a lot of times Zendaya would turn around and literally not let them see her heart. So she would be flip-flopping in there, and just, they would try so hard just to get her heart. But that was the main thing that was what was going on with her, is her heart. And so over time, doctors would say, when I would go in for my appointments, they would say, I'll say, for instance, I went to go have a fetal monitoring. And then after that, I would go into the doctors for the doctor to read that fetal monitoring. Well, during the fetal monitoring, there's a chair here, and there's a chair here, and there's a curtain in between. And so this other girl is there, obviously, for monitoring as well of her baby. And the technician's helping me out, and again, has nothing nice or positive to say. And because the baby's not moving around, and the thing is not going up and down as much, She goes to the other side, and she's like, oh, the baby is doing this and that, and just all these things, and come back over to me and just not have anything nice to say, nothing good to say. So that day when I went to go in to see the doctors, this doctor was standing in for my regular doctor, and the doctor was reading the results to me. And I said, could it be that my baby just moves more at nighttime and not so much in the daytime? The doctor said, no, that's due to the trisomy 18, and she's not going to live anyway. So I heard this many a times. I heard this when we went into the emergency room because Zendaya had caught a little bit of congestion in her chest. And so we took her to the hospital, to Children's, and our little baby was in the cradle. And the doctors come in, this whole team of doctors come in, and they're getting ready to prescribe some medicine for Zendaya. And the doctor, I just felt like all these people were standing in front of me and I was being blocked. And I felt so uncomfortable and just like, what is happening here? The doctor looks over into the crib and she says, well, let's go ahead and just give her this medicine because she doesn't look like she's going to make it anyway. I was just like, wow, wow. This is amazing. Many a times the doctors would say, oh, that's due to the trisomy 18. She's going to die anyway. And so I had to hear this a number of times. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking because, no one wants to hear that. And as a doctor, it just seems like it's very careless of them to even speak like that to someone who is pregnant. Now, is it uncommon? No. It just sucks to hear that this is how they treat their patients, right? You would think, them knowing the news that they have or the information that they have, that they were treated with a little bit more care because they're not even taking you into consideration, and as a male, I can only was your husband with you on any of these?
Most of the time he was, but this one he had to go to work, and so I was there by myself, and that's when I just felt like all these doctors are standing in front of me and just feeling like, oh gosh, I feel alone at this moment and feel like I don't know, because when there's numbers, it just seems more intimidating.
Right.
And so, and I mean, they told me that the medicine they're going to give her was going to deplete her potassium and her sodium levels. And they did. Our little girl was nice and chunky. And all of a sudden we gave her this medicine and she went like this so fast. And so I felt impressed. I said, I am not giving this to her ever again. No more. That's it. That's it. And so as soon as I stopped giving it to her, she started to plump back up again and everything. And I even had a friend. The crazy thing is I had a friend who was praying about it as well. And we were going over to her house and she, like right when we walked in the door, she was like, don't give her that medicine anymore. She was just very adamant about don't ever give that medicine to her again. And I said, I already heard to not give it to her again. And so it was just amazing of how, we were both impressed at the same time to not give that to her anymore. And I want to say too, remember how I said that, the baby was supposed to pass away right after birth, be born stillborn or last a week. Zendaya lived to be almost 10 months. And that's only because we said, we're not going to give up and we're not going to settle for just what you say, which is she's not going to make it anyway.
See, I love the fact that you did that because one thing that I've found is that sometimes doctors don't get it right. And this is why, whenever I talk to people and they go, they talk about the doctors, I go, just keep in mind that their title is practicing medicine.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And so you have to be careful because practicing means that once you step foot in there, you become their guinea pig. They can do whatever they want because until they come up with a true diagnosis, they're going to experiment on you. And what they don't do, or what they don't tell people, and this is, and I could be wrong. You let me know what you think about this. This is why they have you sign that paper saying that if anything was to happen to you, we're not reliable.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So, but people trust them because these guys are supposed to go to school to get their PhD and have all of this knowledge and things like that. And I go, this is not House, right? This is not Grey's Anatomy. This is not a TV show. This is people's lives that you're playing with. And I've seen people come out in worse shape than what they've gone in before, But again, this is just from the things that I've seen in my own personal experience, right? The mistreatment is real. The struggle is real. What are your thoughts on that?
Those exact words my husband has said. He figured out it's practicing medicine. One of the things that we found out is that they didn't really deal with trisomy 18 babies. Mm-hmm. So they just deem you as the baby's going to die, and that's it. So they didn't put much effort or empathy into helping the journey to go a little smoother. And I think that's it's a problem. I mean, just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you can't have a conversation or even a relationship with the person that you're helping.
That's very true.
But we found out real quick that people are in a different mindset. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we had to turn to our community, even on people I didn't know, if they were asking questions, things like that, their hearts were touched. I mean, we just had to have it where people were carrying us. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying of standing in the gap. Well, that's when I figured out, wow, that's what that truly means, is people are standing in the gap for us right now because we don't have the strength to go move forward at this moment,
Right. I love the fact, because that's something that people never really talk about, right? They like when the standing in the gap. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying? People don't really talk about that aspect. Mm-hmm. Now, what was that like to have that support of people standing there with you, walking with you as you go through this?
It was more than what we expected. Mm-hmm. We had no idea about what grief was or what to expect. I can say, like, during my grief, I found out that, when I was younger and my dad left, or as a teen mom, I was having grief then. Or, it's just discovering that, wow, this is grief what I'm going through. And I have no idea what to expect because it's different every time. I've lost my father. This has been way different than losing my father. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, people just came out of nowhere. And we're just helping to carry us. If people ask me how I was doing, I just said, I am making it moment by moment. It's not even day by day. It's moment by moment. There are times where I felt like I couldn't even walk, and I literally felt like I was being carried to move to the next step. So it was amazing. It's very important to have community around.
It is.
It's amazing.
I want to get your honest thoughts on this. When you think about grief, in your own words, what is it to you?
Grief is about being able to cry whenever I want to, mm-hmm. breathing, because you forget to breathe, mm-hmm. and breath is very important, and played a very pivotal part in when Zendaya passed away. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to go through the steps of grief, which was anger and denial. But they were all very important steps that we needed to take. And so grief is a way of expression of how I feel, not my husband, my own grief. Yeah. He's going to do things differently than I am, or feel different than I do at certain times, and so forth. So grief is I think very much needed, though, going through grief, because it helps to propel you to a new level if you're willing to.
You said the key word, if you're willing to, right? And you're right. It is, grief is necessary. It's going to be a part of life, no matter how you look at it. You can grieve anything and everything that comes along with it. It depends on how you perceive your grief at that moment, because
Yeah.
if you're a fighter, you're going to fight against your natural responses or reactions to the emotions that you're feeling, right? Because especially if they're so unfamiliar to you. And then I think that's the reason part of the education when understanding grief comes into play, right? Because it gives you a sense of freedom and saying, okay, like, it's okay for me to be this way. It's okay for me to feel this. It's okay for me to not want to do certain things or want to do certain things.
Yes.
And another key factor is understanding the trust factor that comes along with it as well, right? Trusting yourself to do what is necessary. Trust yourself to have a little bit of patience and grace for yourself, because you said something important. Every grief, every relationship that you have that you grieve is going to be different. It's going to affect you so much differently, and I think that's where you have to look at the full picture, or not even the full picture. I think that's where you have to slow your life down in order to begin to pick apart the things, so you're not so bombarded with everything when that grief wave starts to hit and it tumbles you around like a doggone dryer, right? It's like boots in the dryer, boom, 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 right? Yes. It throws you out. Now, which leads me to my next question. I know you're going through this, but you're watching your husband go through this too. From what you've seen, how did your husband handle this? And I'll get into the loss, because I want to know how, what sort of, I want to know the life that the baby had, because I can only imagine had a really good life for the 10 months and things like that. But yeah, from what you're seeing, how your husband handled it, what did you see?
It's been hurtful at times.
Yeah. Now,
to watch him go through that, because this has been his only flesh and blood. He loved her to where she would save smiles for him when he got home from work, just for him. And, but I can see he's, I've heard some statements made, not specifically with him or our situation, but about men crying. I think it's huge. And I'm thankful to see the tears, because that shows me he's really hurt. And not that that's what people have to do, men have to do, is cry to show their hurt. But I just can see that this was something genuinely painful in his life. And I'll say he was brave enough to allow tears to flow.
I love that, because that's deep and so simple that most people don't even get it. Being brave enough to allow the tears on both ends, right? Because, and I want to get into this, after I say it, on both ends, allowing yourself to be open and brave enough, but also vulnerable enough to allow those emotions and the tears to flow, right? Naturally.
Yeah.
Because it is such a painful thing. And we've talked about this. Child loss is one of those things. And again, every time I say this, I want to go off and reference that I'm not taking away from anybody else's loss. But when you can compare it to different losses, right, you can kind of compare the level of pain that you've experienced throughout that journey.
Yes.
And it's different.
Yes.
It's definitely different. Like, there's a deepness, a very deep ache that comes along with that. Now, it could be, depending on who you're talking to, it could be the same thing for somebody who's lost a sibling. I've lost a sibling as well, right? I've lost parents, things like that. And so there's, I don't want to compare it to someone else's, so to speak, right? I want to always be respectful of that. But I love the fact that you said, to be brave enough to allow those tears to fall, because as a man myself, being told my whole entire life that men don't cry, that You have to buck up, buttercup.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be weak, and all of these different things. We learn to suppress, not express,
Mm-hmm.
and so in turn, we become very emotionally suppressed and damaged men when we get older,
Yeah.
which is the huge complaint when it comes down to our family, friends, or significant others saying, "Oh, is something wrong with him," and this, that, and other, and not even understanding how right they truly are,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, to be able to hear something like that, and I just talked to a young gentleman earlier about this, and to have such a deep and better conversation with him was just phenomenal. I
Mm-hmm.
love it when men can open up and be honest with themselves and go, "Man, I messed up. I'm
Right.
not okay."
Yeah.
But to be able to support one another,
Mm-hmm.
like you and your husband, to be able to support one another throughout that is, I
Yeah.
find, truly amazing as well,
Mm-hmm.
because statistically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
most couples do not make it after a profound loss. Why do you think that is?
One is because you are experiencing different emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and one may feel better one day and the other is really down, and who knows, it might get on the other person's nerves because you're like, well, I'm done grieving, kind of thing, kind of
Mm-hmm.
attitude. And it's like, well, I could see how people could get in a fight about that, of like, okay, are you done grieving? Because let's move on, kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that can cause friction greatly.
Mm-hmm.
um I mean, that's the main thing, is just emotionally how you all are feeling, because it just it's respecting each other's place or position in grief. I think that's what helps to keep things going forward. There's times where we had to carry each other, but if you don't have a supportive spouse, that's not necessarily going to happen.
Right,
But
right.
this is the way we were or are before we even had the loss of Zendaya. And so it may bring up during this time of grief, because again, you have all these different feelings and emotions and things you're going through. It just may bring everything to the surface of how you truly have felt
Right.
in the first place. So I can see why that would make things explosive between the two of you.
Yeah. What I want to talk about that just a little bit, because one thing that I've seen in a lot of cases was the blame game. People blaming each other. If you would have done this, then
Mm-hmm.
then this would have happened, and they
Yeah.
come right back. And it gets so messy.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
gets so messy, and it's so hurtful to see people go through that. Now, I've had it done to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I've been on the receiving end of that, because but I've been on the receiving end of it because unless somebody has really experienced that level of pain, I think they just do the best that they can with what they have to work with,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes they may not um, say the smartest things to someone, but I don't think it's a lack of ignorance. I just think it's a lack of education when it comes along with it. And I think that's an important part
Mm-hmm.
of the grieving process, is the education, having somebody with you to be able to help give you the tools that you need in order to comfort someone who is grieving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about that? What are your thoughts about that?
So we I had found something called Grief Share,
Mm-hmm.
and I was willing to go because for me, my mindset is I want to hurry up and get out of feeling this way. I want to hurry up and get out of this place. Um, I don't want to be stuck in grief, basically. And so I had asked him to go with me, and at first he was a little hesitant to go, and because he was just thinking, oh, it's going to be a bunch of old people, who have lost spouses and things like that. And so he ended up going with me, and it was for 13 weeks. And it was so pivotal, I think, in our relationship as well as just our grief, because they do teach you the tools. They do teach you how you're not crazy for feeling the way that you feel. that it's okay the way that you feel, as long as you're not harming yourself, of course. But I think it's huge to after learning these tools, to respect each other in the phases that you're in. It was very important, because I just wanted to say, I did have a couple of thoughts here and there of, is he going to blame me because, I didn't do everything that I could have, even though I felt like I tried to do everything I could to save her. And I think he felt guilty at times of, like, I tried to do everything I could to save her. I couldn't do enough to save her, but it's respecting that neither of us could. When it was her time to go, it was her time to go.
Yeah. We talk about that, right? That kind of that put me to a place to where, when we say it's their time to go, that was a hard thing to accept, right? Especially when you when they're so young. And we have this expectation in our mind of saying our kids are supposed to outlive us,
right?
Not vice versa. We got a comment from JC up here. I want to pop this up here. Maybe we can talk about that for real quick. Thank you, JC. JC says, I lost my mom a day ago. His mom, best friend, whole world. I miss her so much. The pain is indescribable.
Yes, indescribable. Yeah.
First, I want to say, thank you for being up here and sharing that. So, and my heart is with you. I hate saying so sorry for your loss, because that's, that's not a correct term, but my heart is with you as you and your family navigate this. And, by all means, ask any questions that you have as we begin to talk. And, if we have any resources out here, anybody out there, any grief practitioners out there, that want to put your information in the comment section, please put them over there. JC, we're going to see if we can. If you want, I know it's so soon right now, but if you want, reach out to me whenever you're ready, and we can get you some support for real, and resources as well. Pertaining to especially in Colorado. You're in Colorado Springs. I was going to say Grief Share. I never went to Grief Share, but I do know individuals who did go to Grief Share, and the benefit that I seen from it was so phenomenal. Right now, I've seen their program before, and it's like an oldie but goodie. It could be updated a little bit. It could be updated a little bit more, because we do have some new things that we can give people out there in the world.
I think they just did, actually.
They did? Okay, but that's good. I love it when they upgrade things. I love it when they upgrade stuff, because it's like, come on, people, let's get with the sign of the times. We gotta be on top of your stuff, man. You gotta be on top of this. So now, during this course of time, of you going through your grief and navigating this world, what were some of the challenging things that you yourself had to give up in order to be who you are today?
Being perfect, even though none of us are, but I still had the mentality of, I have to grieve right. I have to grieve perfectly, if you want to say. I have to do things perfectly. I have to go back to a regular job right away. Just fit into the mold of what the world tells you grief should look like.
Yeah.
And so I had to go against the grain, basically, so that I could function myself. Because if I would have, I can only speak for myself of grief with losing my baby. If I would have went straight back to work after losing Zendaya, I would have lost my mind. Like totally went crazy. Because after grief or during grief, I in the beginning stages especially, you feel kind of like you can't focus on one thing. Many things, I just felt like, oh, I'll start here and I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this. You just feel like discombobulated, you know, and you can be hard on yourself because you're like, what is the matter with me? I know I'm a multitasker or whatever, all these things, but I had to learn to be gentle with myself. I had to be kind to myself. I had to not punish myself. I had to just allow myself to have the feelings that I had, but find a way how to release them, like working out, to take care of myself still and not neglect myself totally.
Love that. And if you don't mind, I would like to add to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I did is that I was really, really hard on myself when my son passed away. I used to say, you only have one job. I used to call myself stupid, and
Mm-hmm.
ask myself like, what good are you? You only have one job. You couldn't even do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. But that was before I understood that I wasn't exempt
Right.
from this loss, right? And I think that was the hardest thing to wrap my head around. And the reason being is because I knew people who had their children, and they didn't treat their children the best.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no, none of us is perfect
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that, but I used to always think to myself, like, hold on, I've lost my child, but you still got yours.
Yep. Oh yeah.
There was a huge sense of anger
Yes.
and rage that came along with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I there was a part of me that was going, this isn't fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is not fair at all. How is it that I treated my child, you know, uh, uh, um, really, really well, and you, but then I thought about it. I'm looking at it from a bereaved father's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so all rationale from what I see is playing into my dark consciousness
Mm-hmm.
of saying, of wanting to be a victim, and wanting to be angry at something because I wanted to destroy the world and
Yep.
everything and everyone in it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
wanted the world to stop and acknowledge this pain that I was in.
Yes. Yeah.
But it took me a long time to figure out how to turn that pain into something that I could use,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that takes years to do. In
Mm-hmm.
your own thoughts, what do you think about that statement that I just made?
That's pretty accurate. Especially working at the courthouse, I
Mhm.
saw, and the area that I was in was the filing office, and so in there you took in documents that people were filing for child custody or relinquishing their parenting rights,
Mhm.
or they were on drugs and now they're trying to do this and that with their kids and got them taken away, and just stuff like that. I would see all of these things. And when I think back, or you could just see somebody out in the public, the way that they're treating their kids or whatever, and angry as I don't know what, because my baby's gone, my sweet little girl who we were taking care of, great care of, who was loved by our community and everything, and and my baby was taken away. Why?
Mhm. Mhm.
The biggest question of all is why? But then I've had to incorporate
Yeah.
something into my life, into my vocabulary, which is says, mind your business, mind your own
Mm.
business. That is not your business. And I have to tell myself these things because it's none of your business why they still have their kids. You just mind you.
I love that. Because I had one. I had one where I used to have to tell myself to shut up,
Mm-hmm.
just shut up,
Yeah.
right?
Just shut up.
Um, And what I realized what it did is that it kept me isolated, keeping my mouth shut and just watching things. And I got really good at just watching people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And watching the things that they were doing. And I would just stay out of people's way
Mm-hmm.
because the brain fog. So unfortunately for me, when my son passed away, I did have to go back to work 2 weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I couldn't tell you what I did. Couldn't tell you what I did at
Oh,
all,
right.
right?
Yeah.
I was driving trash truck at the time, and all I know is that I got up every day. I drove to work.
Mm-hmm.
I went to work, did my route, came back home. So I had a routine.
Mm-hmm.
I stuck to this routine. You know, it early in the morning. If I went to sleep, I would go because I had a gym. I had my own home gym. I go work out
Mm-hmm.
before I go to work. Eat, take a shower, out the door, go do my job, come back, eat, work out, take a shower, sit, lay down on the couch, watch a little TV, eat again,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would go lay down, toss and turn. And that was for 2 years, that was my complete
Mm-hmm.
cycle. But I couldn't tell you in those 2 years a conversation that I had with anyone. Although I probably people saying, "Oh man, do you remember when you said this?" I'm like, "What? What? I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember nothing."
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I want to try to describe this the best way that I can because it's still hard for me to put it into words. But there was a void inside of me that could not be filled. Right, like there was a deep emptiness, wide emptiness, and I just didn't know what I was doing. I was lost. Right,
Mm-hmm.
there was no thought or anything. There was just I remember this deep ache,
Yes.
right? That just never went anywhere.
Yeah.
And you can't explain it to anyone. Like it just never went anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
even now it's still there with me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? I've just learned to accept it as part of who I am now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And it doesn't have total control over me, although it has its moments
Yes.
where it demands my attention,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? What do you think about that? What's your thought on it? What's your thoughts?
So there's times where uh, I have to stop myself from going too far because, and I'm not sure why, but this happens to me is when I go to bed and I'm trying to go to sleep, and all of a sudden I can feel the emotion that I felt the day that Zendaya passed away.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
I can go there just like that if I allow myself. But what I have to do is tell myself, nope, you can never go to that point again because that was mourning, MOURNING. That was the mourning, the public display of where I was at, of mourning over Zendaya. But I told myself I can't go there to that level again. I can still cry, but I just can't go to that level again because that would be, to me, that would be starting over.
right,
And I
right,
just don't want to go to that level ever again. I don't want to feel that ever again. And so I think it's really helped being insistent on thinking differently so that you don't go to that level of grief, of that, that level, I'll just say, of that grief.
right. But I think a lot of it comes from your training as well, because you was in the military too, right? So you
Me, no,
was
no, don't, just
oh,
military.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So
But still,
so yeah, I was because that sounds just like I know a lot of people that was in the military,
mm-hmm,
and there's a guy that I listen to on he's a motivational speaker as well, and he talks about that place where
mm-hmm,
he goes when where he has to callous himself, he has to callous his mind, he has to callous his heart to prepare himself for a battle. He looks at life as it's a continuous battle, so he's constantly challenging himself to put himself in the most uncomfortable situations ever,
Mm-hmm.
whether if it's going to jumping off of a mountain, or or jumping out of a helicopter to go fight fires,
Mm-hmm.
right? He has to do it. It's an adrenaline. I don't even think it's an adrenaline rush. I think it's a part of him. As it's a part of who he is. And I think when I look at, or even try to define, that feeling that comes along with grief,
Yeah.
but everything that's associated with it, I came up with it. Grief is selfish. It's clingy. It doesn't care,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when grief shows up, it doesn't matter who you at, where you at, or what you're doing. It demands your attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It needs you to focus on what it's trying to give you. And what I find is that it's not a bad thing when it shows up. It's not a bad thing that it's selfish, because it's bringing up things inside of you that maybe you need to pay more attention to, because grief is revealing, just like healing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it is clingy, right? It's a different form of love for
Mm-hmm.
you. And when we think about grief, they say grief is just love with no place to go. So if you can take that and you can put it in a place for it to go, which is back to you,
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes a little bit more sense. But it goes back to what you said too: mind your business and
Mm-hmm.
shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Because you in your own little thing right there. Mind your business and shut up. Do your own thing. Don't worry about what everybody
Yeah.
else is doing. It
It's
has
not my
nothing to do with
journey. It's not my
it's not
journey.
my journey, right? But no, now when you take it and it does that to you, it is your journey,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's you and your grief.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just applying what you said earlier, like, hey, mind
Yeah.
your business. This is between me and my grief right now, and
Mm-hmm.
shut up, because it's what I found was, that it's speaking to you. It's reminding you of the people that you've lost, but not in a bad way. It's
Mm-hmm.
saying remember and celebrate,
Yeah.
but don't forget that these were human beings in your life, and this is what it meant to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's reminding you of what that means
Right.
on such a deep level. Now I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I'm only speaking from my perspective when I say that. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what do you think?
So your question is, how does say it one more time?
So when you think about grief being selfish and
Okay.
clingy,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about that? Everybody has a different way of looking at it and things like that. But these are just some of the things that I've noticed just from my own growth, as I still grieve,
Mm-hmm.
and heal throughout probably the rest of my life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
But yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if anybody would ever understand that.
Mm-mm.
But this is just things that I figured out that works for me. So when you think about grief being stingy and selfish, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a tough question. Clingy and selfish.
Mhm.
um, I, you may think that everyone should cater to you if you're being clingy or
Mm.
selfish, because I'm still grieving. I lost a baby.
Mhm.
A baby is more. I could see how it could be selfish. A baby is more precious than whatever someone
Mhm.
may think. But yeah, I mean, just that's a hard one.
But it's something to ponder, though, right? It's
Right, right,
definitely
right.
something to ponder.
I've had
So
moments of don't can't you tell I've lost my baby? You should feel.
yes, yeah.
Can't you tell? I mean, I have my necklace on with her little picture here. You
Mhm.
know, you should feel. I don't know. It's yeah. I don't even.
I mean, but that's okay though, right? Because it's something to really think about. Because we do want people to notice instead of just saying words to us. We want
Mhm.
people to notice. But I think it's the having expectations of people to notice it is what gets us.
Yes.
right? But it goes down to, unless an individual has walked that path before,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to notice it. The world does not stop. It's not going to lay everything out on a red carpet for you. And
Mm-hmm.
people aren't just going to line up and say, oh, we get it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Unfortunately, that's not the way it goes. Although we do want it to go that way, right? Or
Moments.
or or, or, or you just want moments where the pain is just not there anymore.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's a forever thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It will.
that's a forever thing, because even now I sit back and I go, I can get wrapped into my isolation. I can block out the whole world
Mm-hmm.
and not even care what anybody thinks.
Mm-hmm.
Because for one, no one never came to me and said, "Hey, are you okay?"
Mm-hmm.
People just assume that I was okay, and I'm okay with people assuming that I'm okay. But when it's time for me to shut down, I don't want, just
Mm-hmm.
leave me be,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I do this to my own sister, so it doesn't really matter who you are. I just go,
Mm-hmm.
I shut down, no warning, no words, no anything like that. Just please, just leave me be. Let me do what is necessary for me without any sort of interference.
Mm-hmm.
If I get too far down the rabbit hole, it's either going to work out one or two ways. Either I'm going to come back out and ask for help,
Yeah.
or I'm not going to come
Or
back
not.
out.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it anymore. And I think this is what people fail to realize, is that there's a the fear of life isn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Life and death. It's
Yes.
no there's no sense of fear of life
Yep.
here.
That's why
When
I'm
I'm
saying
in that, you know, let's talk about when
it's
you
kind of
decided to say,
choppy. So I'm not sure
was
if
that?
it was kind of choppy, so I couldn't hear everything you were
Yeah,
saying.
I think it's kind of looks like it's working itself out though.
Okay.
It's gonna be all right.
Okay.
Um, we, I mean, when you think about it, right? Technology, stuff like that. But so, um, when when was your aha moment when you decided that you was going to use your pain for purpose, to
Uh,
work with your organization?
so I actually didn't want to do this. I actually, I'll just say it started off with, uh, I lead praise and worship at church, and I finally felt like, oh, I could just sit down and be done leading. I could just basically blend in or fade away. That's what I was trying to do. And God had told me specifically, He said, you can sit down for a couple of weeks, but you're going to get back up there. And I was just like, seriously? Don't you realize what just happened, right? And you want me to get up in front of people and continue to sing, and then more and more he's pushed me to talk and just talk about my grief up on stage, and so I'm feeling more and more impressed that start this business. Now at the time I didn't have a name, and I had an attitude as well with God. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I understand that.
And I was like, I don't even have a name for this business that you want me to start. And so I went to sleep and I had this dream, and all I heard was Zeny's heart. And I was just like, oh man, this is real. This is really going to happen. And so over time, then he said, well, I don't, and I'm still saying, I don't have the money to even start this business. And lo and behold, when I go to the Secretary of State website to go and register this LLC, thinking that I'm going to have to pay, like 50 something dollars or whatever, for that month, it was $1. $1 to start your LLC. And I said, oh man, okay, here we go again. Like you're just telling me. And then I heard him say that I will provide everything you need for Zeny's heart. And so, I mean, how can you fight against that? How can you, when everything is just falling into place and you're still trying to push it away and just say, come on now. I don't speak in front of people. I'm not, I get nervous and I don't make sense when I'm talking and I don't know what to say. And I just sing, just let me sing, But no, he was like, no, you're going to talk. You're going to talk and you're going to tell your story about your little baby girl, Zendaya, and talk about grief. And I'm just like, wow, why did you choose me,
Yeah. Is it still a surreal feeling when you look on the journey that you're in, when you at the place that you are now? What is the feeling that you get?
Mm, I am I get overwhelmed sometimes because this is like really coming to fruition. I can say back in the day, I remember writing in my journal about I want to start my own business, but it had nothing to do with, we didn't even know about Zendaya coming or anything. It was just back in the day. I want to be able to make YouTube videos and so forth. And at that time, actually, I was more into like talking to teens of my experience of being a teen mom and a single mom. And but then when I go back and look at my journal, I was like, oh man, I wrote this down and this is actually happening right now with what I'm doing. I actually have something to record. I have something to establish a business with, if you want to say, So it's a feeling of being overwhelmed, but also a feeling of like, okay, you said you got my back. So I'm going to trust you. I'm going to be obedient. And so that's just where I'm at right now. Just be obedient.
I love that. I love that. So now I want to have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
And I want first I want to say thank you for being so open and vulnerable, sharing your journey and your work with us. If you want to know more about Nickole, if you want to reach out to her, her information is in the YouTube channel. So if you aren't on the YouTube channel, head on over there and check it out. And if you want to hit the subscribe button, hit that like, like, comment, share. If you know anybody who could benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this along with them. But most importantly, thank you guys for your support and tuning in. And so, Nickole, with these next couple of questions, I want to ask one. How can people find you?
So I am on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. The ones I utilize the most are YouTube and Facebook. I also have a website, zenysheart.com, Zeny, forget the apostrophe, ZENYHEART.com. And that's where you can, go to all of those social links as well.
I love that. I love that. And so now, if Nickole had a superpower, what would it be?
Empathy.
I love that. That was my first answer that I had when I got asked that question about 3 months ago. Somebody, and that's where I started asking that question. Somebody asked me that, and I was like, empathy. I would love to have empathy for people, not to feel sorry for them, but to understand where they were coming from. So I'm not ignorant in judging people wrongly, right? But to have, to be able to walk with them and care, right?
Yeah.
And so now leads me to my next question. If you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them
with? I also have, I'm just going to throw in a superpower of encouragement. And, I encourage you to know that you are just like the gentleman earlier said, who the pain is indescribable. Yes, it is going to be indescribable right now and for some time, but there is the other side. And I didn't believe for a long time during this grief that I was going to feel better, as we talked about that ache, that heaviness. It felt like literally weights were on your shoulders and you're dragging this grief around. But I can say it does get lighter. It does get easier. I will always think of my baby and have a spot in my heart that may hurt sometimes, but I do know that it will get easier and easier to be able to push through going forward in life. It's very important to keep moving forward. You cannot stay in the same grief and just keep spinning around and spinning around. You will get nowhere. And our life is to be filled with joy and happiness, and we just don't want to hang around in that other area. I mean, it's going to be for a time, but keep striving for happiness and joy, and believe that you can get there. Just put in the work, put in the efforts, be disciplined to say, I want to get to this other side. I'm determined to get to this other side.
I love that. I love that. With that being said, guys, how can people find your YouTube channel?
That is on my website as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the website, and it's connected with, I think, the Facebook as well as
Okay.
Instagram. Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, go check her out. If you love these conversations, you want to know more about it, go check out all of her stuff. We haven't even scratched the surface on it, and she's out here doing some amazing work. So yeah, guys, if you know anyone who can benefit from the services that she has, please reach out there to her. And with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Grease Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. It's Tony Lynch, and yes. We do a podcast every day, so we're going to be back tomorrow. Nickole, thank you again. And for everyone else, get out there, enjoy the weather, be with people, make memories, and don't forget to care for yourself, all right? Because you never know. You never know what tomorrow may bring, all right? Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Catch you guys later.
Thank you.